namaskar to everyone. Because we are going to talk about Bhagwan Krishna today, so let's begin with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And I will add something that one of my gurus. So if you look at the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, it is they call it 12 Akshari or Bara Akshari mantra. And one of my gurus felt like adding something to it. So he added Purushottamaya at the end. So the way he used to chant, and after I became aware of it, I also chanted that way, which is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Purushottamaya. So now that Bara Akshari mantra now becomes a Athara Akshari mantra, like just the 18 parvas of Mahabharata. Krishna Charitra, okay, and brief biography or brief biographical summary of Bhagwan Krishna. The details I want to give them to you right at the beginning. Okay, so when Krishna was here more than 7,500 years ago, his lifespan, and we are going to discuss that as a part of his biography. He was born in 5633 BCE, and his Mahanirvan, Parinirvan, his passing away, that occurred in 5525 BCE. Okay, so that's the time period. Quick information about me. Now, people always ask this question. So I thought I will try to answer it in one particular way today. I always do it in few different ways. Why should we bother to know history? After all, it is something that is done. Now, we should look at the future or we should look at the present. Absolutely. But to understand our present, to solve the problems of our present circumstances, and to ensure that we don't make the mistakes that were done in the past, we do the course correction and we do better than what people might have done it in the past. We learn from their actions. Something else. If someone wants to make you a slave, the first thing they're going to do is destroy your own understanding of your history. And so I'm putting here a quote from George Orwell. Most of you would know the name. If not, hey, these days everyone has a smartphone. So just type his name. You'll find his quotes, his books. Get busy reading, understanding, comprehending. His quote, the most effective way to destroy people, destroy a civilization, destroy a nation, destroy a group of people, is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. And that is why this effort is very important, to understand our history in a very unbiased fashion. Just because it is our history, we cannot be biased about it. And through this presentation also, I would like to provide some insights. Let's begin with the birth of Krishna. When was Krishna born? It was the lunar month of Shravan. Everyone who uses Indian calendar knows the month of Shravan. That's when he was born. The tithi was Vadya Ashtami. The nakshatra, now once you say Shravan and a Vadya Ashtami, you truly don't need to say the nakshatra. Of course, the nakshatra can change plus minus 1, 2. But we also know the nakshatra description. It was a Rohini nakshatra. And the season, now that might be surprise to some of you. The season was Grishma Rutu. What does Grishma Rutu means? The season of summer. The date was 17th, 18th June, 5633 BCE. Now, why am I giving you two dates? Well, one thing is because anytime you want to talk about the tithi, okay, there is always a potential error of plus minus 1 day, because what was the tithi, what was the nakshatra at the time of the sunrise. But that is not the reason why I'm giving you these two dates. Usually that is also a reason why a historical researcher, especially in the Indian context, might give you two dates next to each other. But remember the timing when Krishna was born. He was born right at the midnight. And the way we understand the day change in our times, at least, it's right at midnight, right? And therefore I have given, so it's a midnight between the 17th and 18th of June, based on a Julian reference calendar, 5633 BCE. Now, Shravan Mas and Vadyashtami, everyone knows. Grishma Rutu, it may be a surprise for some of you. If not, I mean, that's interesting too. Then you are already up to date. But I want to explain that it was a Grishma Rutu because number of you would be familiar with this story, which comes from another Puran, Bhagavad Puran. It's not in the Harivamsha Puran, it's not in the Mahabharata. But in Bhagavad Puran, if you remember the story that Vasudev is taking Krishna and crossing across Yamuna, okay? So just take that story out of your mind right now. We are going to follow here, just look at the reference from Harivamsha Puran. And if you still have a question, why not the story from a Bhagavad Puran, make a note of it to ask that question to me during the question answer session. What was the situation in the 6th millennium BCE? That is 6000 BCE through 5000 BCE, right middle of that 6th millennium BCE. Notice when it was the month of Shravan, Vadya Ashtami, the season is decided by the position of the sun. So if you see this earth at the center, sun going around the earth as seen from the earth, and in an Indian calendar, we divide the seasons into 6 different seasons. So at the time of Krishna's birth, the sun was in the area of a Grishma Rutu. So it was a Grishma Rutu. Okay, it was not a heavy rain, and it was not like Vasudeva crossing through a flooding Yamuna, as stated in the Harivamsha. These descriptions are from Harivamsha Puran. In fact, do you know what the descriptions are saying? These are beautiful, perfect descriptions of the Grishma Rutu. The narrator of Harivamsha is describing as the events related to Krishna Janma. He says the area was dry. You know, the trees were cut, or trees were being cut, and they were piled up, you know, at the borders between the different villages, which is to say outside the village. Okay. And as Vasudev is walking with Krishna, or to take Krishna to Gokul, okay, or when he's returning, his feet are getting into a dry dust and also dried cow dung, Karisha Kirna Vasudham. Okay, so it's a season of a Grishma Rutu. The trees are being cut, they are being piled up. Many times they are done it for agriculture purposes. At least the area I grew up, it's a perfect thing that is done year after year. Here says Kantaki Vata Sankulam. In my part where I grew up, it's called covered. Okay, essentially means leaves and branches. And Vasudev is walking through the dry land through dust, and his feet are sometimes getting into dried cow dung. There is no rain to be seen. Okay, so this perfectly matches with 6th millennium BC and Shravana Masa. Vadyashtami. Vadyashtami is not issue, but it's Shravana Masa. Okay. Now, how do we say that? The sun's position is here. Exactly opposite would be the full moon. And if we note down the nakshatra of the full moon, so that is where? From Shravana, Dhanishta, Shatabishaj, Purva, Bhadrapada, Uttara, Bhadrapada, in that region, in the area of a Shravana Mas. Okay, let's go further. Now, let's talk about the lifespan of Bhagwan Krishna. Now, if you ask even the folks on this particular presentation, whoever is attending today, and if I don't show you this slide, I'm sure we will get different answers. Well, why do we get different answers? Because there are different estimates done by various people, and they are there in our ancient Indian narratives. Why I'm stating this, it is very important that we understand, just because we read something in one particular ancient Indian grantha, immediately to jump and start saying that is the thing, or that is the answer, or that is the only answers and other answers are wrong, is basically very foolish. That answer may be true, that answer may not be true. Okay, we can start with the Shraddha because somebody has thought about it and has entered that information in our grantha, but then we have to make use of all the evidence available from other grantha, something that is empirically available. So let's look at the quick scenario here. We have a range from somewhere from a 100 years all the way to 125 years. And I'm sure you have heard these names. Quickly, let's look at them. Where does this number 125 comes from? It comes from Srimad Bhagavad Puran. Okay. Where does this number 116 comes from? It is an indirect inference with lot of interpretations. Okay. From a Chandogya Upanishad, where there is a discussion of Ghora Angiras with a Devaki Putra Krishna. We are not going to go into the details, but I'm just mentioning it so that if you are curious, if you individually are curious, you can go to Chandogya Upanishad and start studying it and see what that discussion is. Obviously, I have studied that discussion, but that will be a digression. So that's where that 116 number with some interpretation has been thought by some people as the longevity, as the time lifespan of Krishna. I will start from the other side. Vishnu Purana mentions more than 100 years, but that's all it says. One great researcher, researcher par excellence, and in this particular field of antiquity of Indian civilization research, I consider him one of my gurus. Okay, amazing person, passed away a few years ago, has done tremendous work. I don't I cannot think of anyone in last 50 years who comes anywhere close to the kind of research he has done. Now, that doesn't mean everything he says is always right, but because that's the nature of our research. Okay, we have to go through in the fashion of vade vade jayate tattva bodha. He estimated that Krishna's lifespan was 101 years. And then Madhvacharya, one of just like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya in his book Mahabharat Tatparya Nirnay, based on his study, okay, or maybe even his disciples, okay, so studying together, he has stated, or that particular grantha, Mahabharat Tatparya Nirnay states that Krishna lived for 107 years. Now, I'm studying this subject for more than 30 years. And if you go to my blog site, you will find actually the blogs that will say Krishna was 125 years old. And not that necessarily I'm agreeing with it, but I am stating why I'm saying that and where is the reference. Then I have also written a blog where Krishna's age was estimated to be 116. I have also written a blog where Krishna's age was lifespan was estimated to be 101. Today I'm going to tell you, because those you can read those blogs and those blogs will always be there on my site. Today I'm going to tell you that based on all the research that is available to me today, most up-to-date research, 107 years makes total sense. And I'm going to show you the evidence also. Okay, so let's go further. That 107 years stated by Srila Madhvacharya, okay, he established the Udupi Krishna Mandir and the Dvaita Vaishnava Sampradaya, okay, Brahma Dvaita Sampradaya or Brahma Sampradaya, okay, please forgive me if I'm not stating the name correct. This is the verse, okay, from this Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay. Upadishyam param jnanam uddhavayam upashramam badarkhakyam prapayitva sapta mabdam shatottaram. The last words, like the last 1/4 is important. Sapta mabdam shatottaram, 107 years. Okay, he lived for 107 years. That is the reference. Now, in order to put together Krishna's biography, this is what we need to do. Because Mahabharata has many descriptions about Krishna, but not much information when he was very young. Not all the activities of Krishna are there in the Mahabharata. And therefore, in fact, Vasudev felt like writing a Harivamsha, which is considered a appendix. Okay, Khila Parva it is called, appendix to Mahabharata. Then, of course, Krishna's descriptions are also found in the Bhagavad Puran, Vishnu Puran, Padma Puran, and many other Puranas. So, to put together the biographical details, I am taking references as they make sense for a consistent picture of Krishna's biography. Now, this is a brief biography. Number of stories, number of events in Krishna's life that most of us are aware of, I'm not necessarily going to discuss them because that won't be like a 40-minute talk. That can go on forever. This is from Harivamsha Puran, where what Harivamsha Puran tells us is that Krishna lived in this one particular place. Okay, so we will call this Vraja, Gokula, okay, and that area like a Vrindavan you would have heard. What Harimosha tells us is that Krishna lived in Vraja up until he was 7 years old. Then there is a description of Yashoda and Nanda. They changing their location along with other cowherds. I'm not going to go into the reasoning why they felt the need to change it. Okay. I would encourage people to read Harivansha Puran. So, but this is the information that he was there for 7 years into Vraja. And then they moved not that far away, that they could have moved to the new area, which would be called either Gokul or Vrindavan. I'll just leave it that to you for additional research. Then I'm going to jump and tell you something else now. For example, now if you want to know what happened next in Krishna's life, especially with a chronological marker, like a 7 years when he was born, then 7 years when he moved, and now we get a reference. Now this reference comes from Bhagavad Puran. It is not there in Harivamsha, meaning the exact age of Krishna when Krishna killed Kamsa. However, how Krishna killed Kamsa, what happened before Krishna killed Kamsa, those wonderful descriptions also occur in Harivamsha and also in Bhagavad Puran. So, what Bhagavad Puran is telling us is that Krishna lived with Nanda Yashoda until he was 11 years old. And this is the time when he killed Kamsa. Okay, so keep that in mind. 0, I mean, when he's born, then 7, and then 11. Just a quick verse there, and we will use this many times. It's something interesting to know, not surprising. What Srimad Bhagavad Puran, Shukla Goswami, or whoever is narrating that particular portion of Bhagavad Puran is saying, he says, Durbhago Batalokoyam. He says, now we so much enjoy Krishna's pastimes, we enjoy Krishna's biography and all his dates, and we say Krishna is a Bhagwan. But how unfortunate in this is this world, and especially the Yadu dynasty, that when Krishna was actually there 7,500 years ago, not many recognized the divinity in him. Even the people, Yadus, some Yadus, I mean, many Yadus who were very close to him. Now that something we can relate to, right? Many of the I mean, in our family also, some person or our friends, when that person passes away, we start appreciating that person. Okay. So, but in Krishna's time, right? Jarasandha and Shishupal and many people, Duryodhan and Karna and everyone, but many people basically trying to put him down, right? So in that context, he's saying Durbhago Batalokoyam. It's very unfortunate that the people even forget the enemies, but even the people close to him did not appreciate his divinity, what a valuable opportunity they had. Okay, so we will just use that somewhere if we need to use it. Okay, now let's talk about Krishna's killing Kamsa. Now, before that, I just gave you a date of Krishna's birth, 18 June 5633 BCE. And because you are on the mute, probably you couldn't ask me like how did I arrive at that? But remember, we in our Indian Sanatan tradition, when we make a statement, we have to say based on what evidence or based on what background knowledge we are saying it. We cannot be careless and casual and just claiming something, but not give the source or not explain the logic behind it. Now, if you are familiar with my research, usually I try to bring evidence from different disciplines of science. You might have heard the term like a triangulation or quadrangulation from other sources, also from me. So I just wanted to give you a visual picture of what the triangulation is and just use that as a metaphor as we go through Krishna Charitra. So what does the triangulation means? Just one piece of information may not be sufficient. We might make an error. But when multiple pieces of information starts coming together, our confidence into whatever that particular evidence is telling us goes up. We feel more confident that this appears to be true, okay, because our goal is to get towards the truth. So how does a triangulation in a visual form may look like? Okay, just for fun. So imagine these 3 points, and if you don't like math, don't worry, okay? You don't need to know anything, but if you love math, you're going to like it. What are these 3 points? Remember, we say 2 points define the line, okay, and 3 points define the curve. But what kind of curve? Okay, so just look at it. So if we have 3 points A, B, C, they are non-collinear. This is a mathematical term. What does that mean? They are not in a one straight line. Do you know what is something fascinating about it? If you have 3 non-collinear points, of course in the same plane, but it doesn't matter, 3 points, you can create a plane there, right? They define one very unique curve. Of course, you can draw all kinds of curves through these 3 points, but there is one type of curve that is very unique because only one answer exists, okay? Again, if you don't understand math, just ignore it. This is some fun, some digression. So let's start with Krishna killing Kamsa. So Krishna is born. Now Krishna is 11 years old. That is when Krishna killed Kamsa. That's what our ancient narratives tell us. Then, of course, many years go by, a lot of activities happen, and the time of Mahabharat war, when Krishna plays a significant role, as everyone knows, including Bhagavad Gita. And then, 36 years after the Mahabharat war, Krishna passed away, and that is the same time the Krishna's Dwarka was flooded by the sea waters, and it was completely destroyed, and it went inside the ocean. Okay, so think of these as the 3 key points. So he's born in what, 5633 BC. Remember, I didn't tell you anything as to what the evidence was. I just said, take this on a Shraddha as an example. Now, he was 11 years old. That information we do have. So assuming, let's say, for a minute, that Krishna was indeed born 5633 BC, then when was he 11 years old? In 5622 BC, when Krishna killed Kamsa. Then 5561 BC, number of you would be familiar with my work. If not, I'm going to show you the books at the end of it. You can read those books. There is so much evidence that 5561 BC is the year of Mahabharat war. And Mahabharat tells us that 36 years after the Mahabharat war, flooding and destruction of Dwarka took place. So if 5561 BC plus 36 takes us to 5525 BC. And now the question, do we have evidence for these events? Okay, including Krishna's birth. Well, I'm going to tell you the evidence that is available exists for these 3 points. And that's what I was referring, at least in this context, the triangulation of evidence, okay, bringing together to make a beautiful, solid, scientific, logical case for Krishna's lifespan, okay, starting point as well as the ending point. So if you connect those points, guess what? You find the midpoints. Now, just for fun, enjoy this. If you don't like math, just have fun, guys. If you love math, you're going to love this. And you already know it, I'm sure. Find the middle points of those 2 lines, okay? Draw perpendiculars there. What you're going to get is the triangle. Put that as a center. And what are you going to find? Okay, you're going to find a circle. This is a unique circle. If you give those 3 points as they are, A, B, C, you essentially create a unique circle. There is only one circle. If you create another circle, it will be concentric. It will exactly overlap this circle. This is just for fun, okay? Now what we are going to do is we are going to look through the evidence. Remember what I said? I just made a statement. Krishna was born 17th, 18th June 5633 BC. Of course, the month of Shravan, Vadya Ashtami, Rohini Nakshatra, that is not difficult to match. We can match that thing, Shravan month, Vadya Ashtami, and Rohini practically every year. Not an issue. Okay, but why 5633 BCE? Okay, of course, I started with Mahabharata year and went backward and forward to the Dwarka flooding. But here I'm telling you story in a linear fashion, beginning with his birth. So now, because we have a description, so he was 11 years old when he killed Kamsa. That year comes to 5622 BC. Now, do we have any evidence in any of our ancient Indian narratives? The answer is yes. We have a lot of evidence, but very empirically, scientifically testable evidence, 5 specific pieces of evidence in Harivamsha at the time, which is to say just before Krishna killed Kamsa. So Andhaka, one of the individual of the same Yadu dynasty, the broad Yadu dynasty, he comes to Kamsa And Kamsa, of course, you know the story that Kamsa is like paranoid, that's Devaki Putra is going to kill him. So he's killing all Devaki's children. And Krishna and Balarama are saved. Now, Andaka comes to Kamsa and he says, your time is coming closer. I don't see good signs. Okay. I see all kinds of interesting things and I'm going to tell you. So he tells a lot of other things. Now, many of the other things are not objectively testable, not testable in an empirical fashion. In a science, we can only test something that can be tested in an empirical fashion. Okay. That is empirical in nature. So there are 5 observations. The first observation is astronomy observation, where Andak is telling Kamsa, he's saying, look, I see a lot of nimitta, lot of signs. Okay, the bad times are coming for you. And one thing he says, Vakram Angarakas Chakre Vyaharanti Kharadvija. He says, Angarak, which is a Mars, has gone Vakra and it's riding the cart of 2 donkeys, that is pulled by 2 donkeys. Now remember, all our ancient literature, especially our Itihasa, like Mahabharata, Harivamsha, and Ramayana, they use these metaphors, they use these analogies to do what? To capture the terrestrial events into celestial reality. And many times you will find in this grantha, the celestial reality is sometimes captured as if it's like a terrestrial story, okay, a metaphorical story of Kritikas or all the nakshatras getting angry with the moon, that moon spends more time with the Rohini and so on. So in this case, what is important is that Mars was going Vakri, whatever the Vakri meant, on a cart of 2 donkeys. Now, who are they? If we go to this 5622 BC, the Mars is going Vakri. I'm not going to take you into technical detail, but I'll simply tell you that Vakri, during the time of Mahabharata, which is 7,500 years ago, did not mean retrograde. So if anyone tells you that Vakri means retrograde in the Mahabharata times, they are not telling you the truth. How do I know that? There are total of 3 specific observations in Mahabharata, one here in a Harivamsha, and in every time it means a specific thing, which is not, we are going to go into technical detail, but I have discussed it elsewhere in my YouTube videos. Therefore, I'm not going into technical detail, but it's very consistent and it is not retrograde. Okay, so first reference. And what is that Vakra? I'll just briefly tell you. It means a planet crossing the ecliptic from one side to another. So this line, yellow, sort of a green line, if you see where my cursor is, that is the path of the sun. And if you notice, Mars is right on the ecliptic. It is going from the south to the north. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to cross and go in this direction. Okay, just one simple observation. Now, don't make a big deal about this observation other than the greatness of Vakra. There are 4 more observations, and I'm going to tell you the most wonderful observation, the last in this one. The next one, Harivamsha also mentions that there was a solar eclipse. Again, remember, solar and lunar eclipse dime a dozen, not a big deal. But the fact is that Harivamsha mentions that at that time when Andaka is talking to Kamsa, there was an eclipse, and there was an eclipse that we can show with astronomy knowledge. The next one, it says, again, Andak is telling to Kamsa, Esha Goro Grah Swatim Mullikhan ke Gabhastibi. Okay, some evil planet, Goro Graha, okay, scary planet, is afflicting Swati, Nakshatra Swati. And for that particular date, again, we can show that the Ketu, one of the Rahu and Ketu, these are considered evil planets. And in the Mahabharata times or Ramayana times, they were only known as Rahu. The Ketu was not used as it is used in our times. Okay, but in 7,500 years ago, at least in the Itihasa narration, Ketu was not used in the sense of node of the moon. But yes, they both are considered. I mean, Swarabhanu, that was the word used many times. Okay, or Rahu, that was the word used. And again, we can show that the node of the moon, in this case Ketu, was there near Nakshatra Swati. One more before we get to the exciting observation. This is not again a big deal. All that I'm showing you can happen every year. But what I'm going to show you next, it has not happened again ever in the last 10,000 years, except the instance I'm going to show you. And it perfectly matches Harivamsha. So here, it also says, Andaka is telling Kamsa, Budena Paschima Sandhya Vyapta Ghorena Tejasa, that the Mercury could be seen in the west. Now, what's a big deal? Not really a big deal. But those who are in astronomy do know that it is not, it is important. It's not that easy. Because Mercury, most of the time, we don't get to see it because it's very close to the sun. And so, where do we get to see it? Either we get to see before sunrise or we get to see it after sunset. And we get to see it for a very short time. So, if somebody is claiming something, this is something very good to check, okay, to falsify. So, Mercury was seen in the west, which means the Mercury should be east of the sun. And once sun, this is the horizontal line. Once sun goes below, can you still see the Mercury up in the sky? If the answer is yes, then this statement is valid. Okay, these are relatively simple statements in astronomy. Great. But next one is the fascinating one. And as I said, this has not happened again. Okay, in the last, I mean, this has not happened ever other than this instance in last 10,000 years. Period. What does it say? Again, Andaka is telling Kamsa, Ketuna Dhuma Ketostu Nakshatrani Trayodasha Bharanyadini Binnani Nano Yanti Nishakram. He says, Kamsa, my dear Kamsa, did you notice what happened? This big Dhumaketu, okay, a comet, is covering 13 nakshatranim trayodasha. Now, do you know what is the significance of 13 nakshatra? The total nakshatras are 27, and that completes the whole circle, around the earth. So 13 nakshatra is at any given time, the entire visible portion of the sky is 13 nakshatra. And Andaka is saying this comet is so huge in the sense as seen from the earth. It is covering all the 13 nakshatras. Now remember, comets comes relatively frequently, different comets. There are hundreds of comets. But when they come, that's called apparition. How they look, how broad area of the sky they cover changes. Many times the comets come only through the binocular, you can see through it, or through telescopes. This one was, of course, just visible. It was covering 13 nakshatras. Not only that, something else. It says, Bharanya Deni Bhinnani Nanu Yanti Nishakaram. It expands from the nakshatra Bharani. And you know where it is here in this case? This is Ashwini, and right here is the nakshatra Bharani. Right from there, the brightest spot of the comet, and then its tail went all the way covering the entire sky. Just imagine how scary that picture would have been. And that's what it is describing. And that's what we can show to be true exactly 22nd March 5622 BC. We don't see that again in this particular formulation as described in Harivamsha. Okay, this is an extremely powerful evidence. It says to the extent the path of the moon is totally blinded. The moon, we cannot keep track of the moon because we can't exactly notice the nakshatra. This comet is that bright. Okay, so I did not give you any evidence for its birth year 5633 BC, but we are going backwards. So we know the wonderful evidence when Krishna killed Kamsa. We also know that he was 11 years old. And now we can go backward and say when Krishna was born. That's how actually I figured it out. So I just shared with you astronomy evidence of Harivamsha and Bhagavad Puran. Okay. Then what happens? Now, after Krishna killed Kamsa, Krishna did not sit on the throne. Okay. He took away Ugrasen who was put in the prison by Kamsa, and put him on the as a king, okay, back on the throne. Now, Krishna and Balaram spent few years in Mathura. Okay, this is Prapta Yavana Dehastu. Okay, so let's take that as a 16 years, from 11 to now, 5 years they spent just having fun. And now Vasudev started thinking, you know what? I mean, they are bright kids, but they have not gone to school. Maybe it's a time to send them to school. They had a lot of fun. So he sends them to Sandipani Muni. Okay, and the story of Krishna meeting Sudama there. Okay, these are the paintings done by my very good friend, Zai Alamji from United Kingdom. Okay, so the story of Krishna and Sudama. So beautiful paintings, enjoy them. Krishna is very, very sharp kid. Okay, and he learns things very fast at the ashram of Sandipani. The descriptions we get from Harivamsha, it says Ahoratra, okay, by studying day and night. Don't we see that description? Sometime who is studying very hard. Yeah. He became expert in all the 64 arts. Okay. If you see there, Chatushashtya. That's why he's also called Purna Avatar. Okay, one of the reason is he was expert in everything. Okay, he can do a very good dance, the Garba dance, right? He can do a good Vrindavan dance. He can play the flute. He's a musician. He can wield the bow and arrow. I mean, if you notice, he was considered as good or even better or as good as Arjuna and Satyaki and Bhima, right? And Abhimanyu and so on. But he was also good with the club, and we'll talk about the club. Okay, he was good with the chakra, Sudarshan chakra, but many other chakra. He was a good diplomat. He learned all the arts in a very short time, all the Vedas. Okay, Chatushpade, Dhanurvede, all the Upavedas. Okay, Achirena in a very, very short time. Now, the two types of degrees used to be awarded. Okay, and that has to do with the Shraddha and Pradnya. Okay, the one degree, say if you are not a bright kid, if you think, okay, then you will, but if you follow all the discipline in a Gurukul, you will get the degree, and it was called Vratasnatak. Okay, so you are disciplined kid, and that discipline will help you in the life. The second degree, and this was a dual degree program. In principle, you could get both degrees. The second degree, okay, was called Vidyasnatak, meaning you have become expert into all these various arts that you decided to do. Krishna was an extremely bright individual. I mean, that's why he's avatar there. And he received those both Vratasnatak and Vidyasnatak. So Guru gave the blessings. Now the time comes for Guru Dakshina. Now Guru is not asking for it. Now Krishna goes to Sandipani and says, how should I repay the debt? I mean, all that wonderful things that you have done for me. And Sandipani Rishi says, something has happened in my life now that you ask. My son was taken away by some individual, and I don't even know his whereabouts. If you can help me find him and bring him back, that will be great. So Krishna and Balaram start doing their investigation. Okay, finally find out where the Sandipani's son is, who has taken it, and the information again Harivamsha tells us that it was taken by an individual called Panchajanya. Okay, and that individual was across the oceans, across the sea. So Krishna, Balaram go across the oceans. We don't know exact direction and whatnot, but they go there and they actually free Sandipani's son from this Panchajanya. In the process, they actually also acquire the conch shell of Panchajanya, that is that Pachajanya, Pachajanya, Rishikeshe, Devadatta, Dhananjay. Each of these people who have their conch shell and makes a specific sound, and they have the names. That's how Krishna received the Panchajanya conch shell, okay, the Shankha. Okay, so that's the story that we have. This information is not there in Mahabharata. It comes from Harivamsha. That's why we quoted it. So now Krishna's education is complete. And then many things happen, but we are going to fast forward, okay, just to keep up with time and also the scope as a brief biography. Now, time comes for the Mahabharata war. Most of you know all the descriptions that you want to know about the Mahabharata war. Okay, so my goal is not to go into the descriptions. But when did the Mahabharata war happen? Again, if you have seen my other lectures, if you have read my books and blogs and videos and whatnot, you know it. 5561 BCE. Now, that's a year. But what is the specific time? The 18 days are from 16 October through 2nd November 5561 BCE. Please pay attention, because I'm going to tell you something more as a bonus material that comes out of this. Now, how old was Bhagwan Krishna at this time? Remember, 5633, you can do the math, around 72 years old. We also know that the Arjun was almost of the same age as Krishna. How do we know that? Just from some of the softer descriptions from Mahabharata. When Krishna comes to meet Pandavas, say in a Vanvas, and this happens multiple times, anytime they meet, Krishna meets with the Pandavas. This is a typical scenario. Krishna goes and does his namaskar, okay, obeisances to Yudhishthir and also to Bhima. Why? Because they both are elder to Krishna. Then Krishna always hugs Arjun because they are of the same age. Okay, doesn't have to be exactly same. And then Nakul and Sadev come and they do namaskar, vandan, okay, to Krishna because they are younger. So that gives us an approximate idea that Krishna and Arjun are of the same age. They both were around 72 years at the time of Mahabharata war. So just remember that information. Also remember the days, 16 October through 2nd November. Now, if you are already familiar, you don't have these questions. But what evidence is there? Okay. I mean, huge. I mean, we can discuss this forever. I did like a few day long workshop at Chinmaya a few years ago. And after like 5 days, we were still discussing only Mahabharata astronomy evidence, and we are not done with it. So there is, I mean, Mahabharata text is super rich in evidence of all kinds. I'm going to show you in a second, but there are 300 plus astronomy pieces of evidence, and if you put them together in a logical and scientific fashion, like solving a jigsaw and a crossword puzzle, like a complex jigsaw plus crossword puzzle together, it takes you to 5561 BCE. There are 100 plus specific references to river Saraswati. River Saraswati is in the flux, in all different shapes. Somewhere it is flowing beautifully, other places it has gone under the sand. Vinashan is already there. It's no longer meeting to the ocean. It is split into different things. All those descriptions also match for 6 millennium BCE. And what about other evidence? Multidisciplinary evidence, just a number I put 50. Actually, you cannot count the number of data points that you have. Okay, so this is just a wonderful picture that gives you a summary. And I just want to point out, you can read the whole thing. I want to point out a couple of things. Out of this, if you take away, okay, the genealogy of the kings and sages, which is what? This was the king and his son was A, and a son of A was B, and son of B was a C, and so on and so forth. Okay, this helps us understand relative chronology of our historical events. Now, that is something that you cannot objectively test. What I mean by that is, unless you have some objectively testable evidence of those individuals, it is a list. That's what you have. And it might say between these two kings, there were 300 years. We say, okay, if you say so, right, you can take it on a Shraddha. There is another evidence, which is a travel records, like the Greek Megasthenes and whatnot. They coming in the later times, talking to people in India and documenting whatever they wanted to know about India. Again, the descriptions are there, but we don't know how to objectively test it, meaning we have to either trust Megasthenes, Plutarch, and whoever was copying that. The reason I mention those is if you just take a couple of those out, there are like, I don't know how many, 20 plus different disciplines of science that are listed here. Okay. And all of them, if the evidence exists, and as Krishna tells in Bhagavad Puran, Shruti, Pratyaksham, Aitiyam, Anumanam, Chatushtayam, if you can do quadrangulate, see, just like looking at a piece of rock or looking at some object and say doing a carbon dating, and it tells me how old is that object. That is Pratyaksha and Anuman. That is great information, but that doesn't tell you anything about the history. You also need what? You also need Shruti, and you also need Itihasa. You need the historical narrative to connect with those objects. Okay, so if you do this quadrangulation, every single evidence, if it exists, is going to take you to 5561 BC. One quick point. Now people say, I don't know which school they went to, but they will say, okay, so that's astronomy is fine, this is fine, river Saraswati is fine, oceanography is fine. Where is archaeology evidence? I cannot trust anything unless I see archaeology evidence. And I wonder which school they go to or which school they went. Because as I showed you, if you pull those two pieces of evidence, like say genealogy of kings and sages and say travel records, everything else that you are seeing here, 20 plus different disciplines of sciences, hard sciences, even if you remove linguistics, because there can be a lot of mumbo jumbo sometimes. So it will be like limited to 20. Guys, this is archaeology. Okay, if you don't understand this is archaeology, go back to school. This is archaeology, except unless you remove a couple of those, or maybe maximum of 3 or 4. Something beautiful. You can connect Ramayana with the Mahabharata, Mahabharata with the Ramayana. How many of you know that all the Mahabharata heroes know Ramayana very well? While they're fighting, they're quoting something from Ramayana, while they're describing, hey, this is how I'm going to kill you. Or hold on, why do you say that? Don't you know what Indrajit did? And so on and so forth. Or do you remember what Hanuman did to somebody else, from the Ravana side? Or what Rama did to Ravana? Okay. All these very specific descriptions of Ramayana are known to Mahabharata war. And that also helps us because Ramayana has to be before Mahabharata war and so on and so forth. Okay. Enough evidence, guys. Enough evidence. I mean, on a Shraddha, you can say that, yeah, Mahabharata war happened in 5561 BC, but I don't want you to stop there. No, never. In fact, you know what Bhagwan Patanjali says? How your journey should be? Is a Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, Purvaka, Itaresham. Forget the word Itaresham. Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, Purvakam. The journey from Shraddha, think of that as a Vratasnatak, just a discipline, all the way to Vidyasnatak is a prajna. That is the journey. How do you do it? Shraddha, Virya, prowess. Shraddha, Virya, Smriti. Okay, other literature. Samadhi, which is what? Dhyana, Dharana, Samadhi gives you a samyak jnana, a very unbiased attitude to analyze anything. And prajna, sharp intellect. That is going to take you there. So you can take it with a Shraddha and stop there, 5561 BC, that's perfectly fine. But there is no reason why you should stop there. You should take this journey to prajna. Go through each of this evidence that I have presented through many different ways and become familiar with it. Okay, so let's move forward. At that time, Krishna is 72 years old. When I posted this slide just this morning, one great individual, he's a Shigra Kavi, he wrote this. Okay, this was, I think, in Twitter. Vividhangi, so looking at that picture that I showed you on the previous page, Vividhangi Bahusparshi Divya Chakshu Pradayini Jnana Bhandara Samsuchi Kala Drushti Prabodhini. Okay, you need a Divya Drushti. Now, just like Sanjaya, had from Vyasa. Now, Divya Drushti doesn't just mean something magical. Actually, what does this mean? The intellect, this is a Pradnya Chakshu, just like a Divya Chakshu is a Pradnya Chakshu. Okay, it's a Tarka Shastra, Tantra Yukti, okay, all that bringing it together. That is that Divya Chakshu. And then you can start understanding that evidence. And we'll see one example of that. Couple of bonuses I'm going to give you in this one. Kali Yuga. Many people are wondering when Kali Yuga ends. In the question answer, if you ask me the question, I'll give you my humble answer to that. But I can tell you when Kali Yuga begins. This is a brilliant original work of a very young Dharma researcher, Indic researcher, Jivan Rao. Okay. And what he has shown, and I'm going to just briefly mention with evidence par excellence, that Kali Yuga began on the last day of the Mahabharata war. Kali Yuga began on the 18th day of the Mahabharata war. Nakshatra was Pushya. This is based on evidence, and I'm going to show you how much evidence is there. And that day was 2nd November 5561 BC. That is the beginning of a Kali Yuga as per the Mahabharata tradition, as per the Krishna tradition. Krishna is a part of Mahabharata. Krishna and a Mahabharata tradition. This is 2nd November 5561 BC is the first day of a Kali Yuga period. Okay. All right. Now, what evidence we have? Again, I'm just going to give you a short snapshot. But for example, I quoted Madhvacharya or his book Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay. In that same book, he says, I will not read the verse, but he says, when did the Kali Yuga begin? He says, Kali Yuga began on the day when Duryodhana was killed. And when was Duryodhana killed? Duryodhana was killed on the 18th and the last day of the war. Okay, very late in the day or in the afternoon, you can say. Okay, late in the day. That's when Bhima killed Duryodhana. So that's when Kali Yuga began. And of course, then he also says, but the true effect of Kali Yuga became visible only after Krishna left. And when did Krishna leave? 36 years after the Mahabharata war. That is what he's referring to, Shatri Shabdam Punah Krishna. Okay, and these are the descriptions again you will find in the Bhagavad Puran and so on and so forth. And people make a chaos for no reason whatsoever, confusion and delusion. It's very, very clear. I'm not just saying Madhvacharya is saying it. Madhvacharya is making very clear that it started on the last day of the war when Duryodhana was killed. But Harivamsha is saying the same thing. Mahabharata is saying the same thing. Now, are these just one statements each? Nah. I would encourage you to read Jivan Rao's blog, and also he's working on a book and all that, and it will come out soon. He has got 100 plus evidence from the Mahabharata alone. Okay, from Harivamsha, from Bhagavad Puran, from Vishnu Puran, and from many other Puranas, Skanda Purana, Markandeya Purana, whatnot, plus this like Madhvacharya statement. Okay, all points to the last day of the war, 18th day of the war, Nakshatra Pushya, and therefore 2 November 5561 BC. Okay, so let's update our knowledge there. So now we have astronomy evidence, multidisciplinary evidence for the year of the Mahabharata war. We also learned something about the beginning of a Kali Yuga, 2nd November 5561 BC, the last day of the Mahabharata war. Okay, let's go further to the last point, Dwarka. This is a picture of a Dwarka as artists imagine it, against the ocean, next to the ocean. In fact, it was an island. If you see the descriptions, I have given my other talks on the Sangam itself, like Krishna's Dwarka. Please listen to that. It was an island. Okay, there were bridges from Krishna to go to the land. Sorry, not Krishna, from Dwarka to go to the land. Okay, and flooding and destruction of Dwarka is also at the same time when Krishna passed away. So therefore, I'm just quoting that another the verse that I already showed from Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya of Madhvacharya, where Krishna lived for 107 years. So now let's do the math there. 5633 BC minus 5525 BC, it gives you 108 years, which is more than 107 years. The place where Krishna passed away, Parinirvan, Mahanirvan, whatever you want to call it, is a place known as a Bhalaka Tirtha. This is in Gujarat, and I'm just showing you on the map. This is not far from a place called Mula Dwarka. Now, Mula Dwarka is not Krishna's Mula Dwarka. Krishna's Dwarka is actually inside the ocean, okay, underwater. But when that was gone, of course, we always need to find a place as a reference where Krishna's Dwarka was. So there is a place which is a beautiful spot, because right from there, if you go straight into the sea, of course, in the southwest direction, that is exactly where you should look for Krishna. Again, for Dwarka. I will encourage you to watch my Krishna's Dwarka talk for the details. But what I want to show you now is a quick evidence of Dwarka flooding, and how that perfectly matches with the lifespan of Krishna of 107, 108 years. So flooding and destruction of Dwarka. Remember, I told you that how you go from Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, that journey. I'm going to show you a beautiful triangulation of Tantra Yukti, Tarka Shastra, and Vijnana Buddhi. And we need to do this for every single piece of evidence. Okay, it's a must. What you see here, again, I will not go into the technical details. I should say my thanks to Savitri Mumukshuji for bringing this paper to my attention. It's a 2017 paper. Just pay attention if you love technical stuff. If not, you can kind of just enjoy the ride for next 2-3 minutes. But it's very fascinating. What happens, remember, for last 20,000 years, the seawater is going up. This seawater level was so low that water, even when there was a tsunami or flood or something, the water never went into this cave for a long time. But seawater is rising for last 20,000 years. And I'm going to show you how much sudden rise was there in the seawater in 5525 BC when Dwarka was flooded and destroyed. This is not in Dwarka, guys. This is in Indonesia, okay, very close to India still. Banda Aceh, okay, Aceh Banda, Sumatra Island, very close to Andaman Nicobar. So what happened is, when the water level was going up, at some point, because ocean water level is up, at some point when the tsunami came, finally that water could go over this cave sill and started depositing evidence of organic material. And so therefore, in this particular cave that you're seeing in the picture, there is no evidence of any tsunami before 5525 BC. Think of that 7400, 7500 BC, that Mahabharata time. But after that, it retains all the evidence. Now, this previous picture looks fancy, and beautiful and clean. The real actual work, it's a lot of hard work, and that looks like this, okay? And that's not fun, guys. Okay, this needs a lot of tapasya. This needs a lot of subject matter knowledge. So I'm going to see if I can simplify this. The simple point I will say is that from the time of the Dwarka flooding, Mahabharata war, and then Dwarka flooding, this particular cave in Indonesia has saved the evidence of all the tsunamis, all the flooding, and some special event. Something very interesting. If you follow the x-axis, so this is 7,500 is that 5525 BC. But if you come here, this is very important, guys. You pay attention, because unfortunately, out of 130 different claims for Mahabharata, like half of them, like 60 plus, are unfortunately claimed in this middle area, okay, of 3000 BCE. So this is 5,000 years ago, which is like 3000. So this area. What is something fascinating? Do you see something? So yes, there are these flood and tsunami records in the ocean until this point of 3500 BCE. But after that, there are no records. So there were no significant tsunamis or anything until you come to 1500, 1600 BCE. You understand? From 3500 BCE to 1600 BCE, in the Indian Ocean, of course, on the east side in this case, there are no significant tsunami events. Very important to remember, okay? Especially those people who very illogically claim the occurrence of Mahabharata into that 3000 BC area and even pretend to show evidence for Dwarka flooding. Okay, it's very, very interesting. Okay, but I'm going to show you something else. Now, why there are no events marked there? Well, there is the evidence coming from the Dwarka coast. This is from the Arabian Sea, Sindhu Sagar. This is this 5525 BC, the arrow where I have done, and sudden 15-meter rise, which is to say 50 feet rise. Then what happened? Just after that Dwarka flooding, there was an additional 8-meter rise, and actually ocean water went 3 meters above today's water levels. Okay, and therefore that also explains why Dholavira or Lothal were ports sometime from 4000 BC or 5000 BCE until like 2000 BC. That is what the evidence says. And we understand why that is so. Now, ocean is not the only thing. There is also land changes. But the sea level was 3+ meter on an average higher during that time than it is today. Actually, the water level went down afterwards. This is what I'm showing. This is a study from the West Coast, Dwarka and the Arabian Sea. You get evidence from Turkey for this sudden rise of ocean levels in 5525 BCE. Now, those of you who love science again, look at those numbers 1 through 9. These are specific scientific indicators, certain parameters that were measured, all of them pointing to sudden formation of a saltwater sea known as a Black Sea in 5525 BC. So this was not a local event just on a Dwarka. This was a global event. And just to give you an idea, how much evidence for 5525 BC and where do we find it? Everywhere around the world. The people, those individuals who are not of an Indian background, okay, but somehow interested in an Indian history, they are bringing a lot of this evidence to my attention. I'm just going to show you what I just shared. Aceh Banda, just notice the location of it. This is a Sumatra island, the tip of it. Andaman Nicobar is somewhere here. So that is the evidence I shared, that cave. Okay. Then Arabian Sea, the Dwarka evidence that I showed you, like a 23-meter rise in the 6th millennium BC, 15 and then 8 and 3 meters above. That is from the west coast. Okay. Then Black Sea formation that I just showed you, the 9 parameters, that is from Turkey. But there is no dearth of evidence. This is all archaeology evidence, guys. Okay, in case somebody is not still understanding. If you go to Caribbean, okay, the same Professor Paul Blanchon, who was doing PhD when I was doing my master's at University of Alberta in Canada, he looked at 7 different locations in West Indies. Okay, now you're following cricket there, so everyone knows West Indies, and showed that there was a sudden rise of 6.5 plus meters. That is what, 20 feet in 5525 BC, 7 different locations. Evidence is everywhere. You can go to Pumpuar, the east coast, a very recent research from Professor Somashekar Ramaswamy, showing sudden ingression of water all the way to Mayuram. Those of you who know Tamil Nadu, okay? Right now it is inside a land 10, 20 kilometers. The water was all the way to Mayuram, and for next 2000 years, Mayuram was a seaport. Okay, that is a work of Professor Ramaswamy. Again, perfectly matches with 5525 BC. But you can go as much as wherever you want. The Great Barrier Reef, you have evidence there of a sudden rise in around that 7,500 years ago. You go to Dogger Bank, UK, between Norway and Scotland, you find the evidence. This is the evidence somebody brought to my attention very recently. If you go to the east coast of USA in Maine, you see the evidence. This is very old evidence. I mean, I'm aware of this evidence for last 15, 20 years, and some of them that I was not aware, I'm learning through others. Huge evidence for 5525 BC. Let's summarize that. So we looked at astronomy evidence, we looked at astronomy evidence, multidisciplinary evidence for 5561 BC, and now oceanography, seismology. I did not discuss seismology. Oceanography, seismology evidence for 5525 BC from around the world and also from Dwarka. Quickly, last point, second bonus evidence. Okay, for a long time, now that once I determined 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharat war, I started researching, and as any researcher should do, and many others have tried that, like Dr. Vartak is a great example. I was trying to find the specific timings of other events of Mahabharat, other events of Bhagwan Krishna's life. And it comes as a sudden surprise, by luck, by the grace of Bhagwan Vyasa. Unless there is a grace, you don't get the answer. Sometimes it takes years, like decade or whatnot. So finally, this Khandavana Dahan, I could determine the date of it. Again, it's related to Krishna, related to Mahabharata, so I just thought I'll mention it. That year was 5590 BC. How do we figure this out? Just a quick fun thing. The reason I'm presenting this again is that number of you at least who are curious, and I get 200 plus emails every week. Maybe at least 25, 50 of them want to do original research like me, which is great. But they have a very wrong idea of how original research is done. It takes long time and there is no guarantee of success, guys. Okay. So just to give you as a fun example, how the research takes place, how you have to make use of all this Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, okay, to get to the answer. And still be humble enough that you could be wrong, additional evidence may pop up, and you should be willing to change. What it shows, this is a description of a Gandiva Dhanusha. Okay, the name of Dhanusha of what Arjuna is carrying is a Gandiva, right? And so when he is giving away, when they are ready to go, what you call the Prasthana Parva, okay, all five start walking in the Himalayas with Draupadi. That is when on the way he gets rid of the Gandiva Dhanusha. He says its work is done. Okay, and so Brahma is coming there and all that story. So we know that is when is that? That is actually very same time, very close, just after, but same time as 5525 BC. After Krishna passed away, they just quickly put Parikshit on the throne. Okay, Krishna's grandson on the throne of Indraprastha, Parikshit on Hastinapur, and they went for the Prasthan. Okay, so they gave it away. So we know when Arjuna gave up his Gandiva Dhanusha. We also know, just as a description, when he received it from a Varuna at the time of a Khandavana Dahan. Okay, and that is the time he actually received his chariot from Varuna also. Okay, the Gandiva Dhanusha also. And Varuna also gave Krishna Vajranabha Chakra. Just like Sudarshan Chakra, he gave another Chakra, Vajranabha Chakra. And he also gave Krishna another club, okay, named Kaumodaki. Okay, that's how he got the Kaumodaki. So maybe a lotus shape or something like this, that's what he got. Now, somewhere it also tells us this is the time in the Virata Parva, when everyone has gone outside the city and Kauravas attack the Virata's kingdom, and only Uttara is there. The young prince Uttar, the princess Uttara, and Arjun as a Brahannida. So Arjun goes with Uttara because Uttara is a young, right? And that is where the description comes, and description says Arjuna is carrying this Gandiva for 65 years. Now, the reason I'm bringing this is that is given there, that is a very statement, but you have to use your intellect, the context, to interpret that information. And I'm going to give you two interpretations. For example, Dr. P.V. Vartak, Padmakar Vishnu Vartak, what he did is, which is again a very interesting interpretation, he said, what does that mean is that Arjun was 65 years at the time of Gograhana, the Virata Parva event. And so a narrator is just saying Arjuna is having Gandiva for 65 years because that's what the statement says. But remember, Arjuna did not get the Gandiva from the time he was born. He got it from Varuna only at the time of the Khandavana Dahan. But if we take what Dr. Vartak interpreted, and his assumption is, which is very interesting and believable, he said, look, if you are a chemical engineer, like I'm a chemical engineer, and let's say I retire at 65, and I'm talking to someone and somebody challenges me on some chemical engineering thing, and just to say as a boast or something, I'll say, come on, hold on, stop. I'm a chemical engineer for 65 years. I may say that when I'm 65 years old. In reality, I'm not a chemical engineer for 65, okay, for 65 years when I'm 65, because I did not become chemical engineer when I was born. So, but Vartak said, so that's how people may talk in a real life. And so what this refers to is that Arjuna was 65 years old. And based on that, he estimated Krishna's lifespan as 101. So he took 65 as Arjun. Krishna is same as Arjun. Remember, I mentioned that. And then this is the time of almost Mahabharata war. Okay, just before. So he added 36 years. So if you do 65 plus 36, you get 101 years. That's how Vartak arrived at the estimate of 101. Now, you can say that's right or wrong. You may like it, you may not like it. But now you see the evidence, the interpretation, the logic that was used to arrive at that number. What I have done here is slightly different. I said, now who is saying this statement? Remember, the Mahabharata that has come to us is like after 4 or 5 different recensions. Mahabharata, Vyasa wrote Mahabharata, he taught his 5 disciples. Vaishampayan told to Janmejaya. There was a Sauti, Romaharshan Sauti, who is listening to that, who goes to Naimisharanya, and with a Shaunaka Rishi and other Rishis, now he recites it again. And that somebody documented that comes to us. So now here, who is exactly saying this statement? Of course, Brahma is saying it or whoever is saying it, but it is the Vaishampayan. It is the Vaishampayan who is saying it. So actually the statement is in a way documented long after the Mahabharata war, like say 80 years after that. So now my interpretation, see, just if you can stay with me. So what I said is that 65 years Arjuna is carrying the bow. Although the statement is made in Virata Parva, it truly referring to the total duration Arjuna was carrying the Gandiva Dhanusha. If you take this interpretation, this is my interpretation, then what happens? So now we know exactly when Arjuna gave up a Gandiva Dhanusha, 5525 BCE, approximately, but that's enough for us, right? And from there now we have to go backwards for 65 years. And that gives us a estimate or a claim for the time of Khandava Vana Dahan. That comes to 5525 minus 65. Understand how the BC math works. BCE before gives us to 5590 BCE. Now, how do we know that this is correct? Well, we will never know anything for sure, anything. That's how the world works. Okay, Shankaracharya, of course, different context, he says that, right? Satyanrute dve mithuni krutya vartate lokayatra. The common man's journey goes through satya and asatya, the knowledge, vidya. That's how the journey goes, right? But what I'm saying is, does that 5590 make sense? Yes, there are some other indicators we can make use of. I'm not going to make it complicated for you. One thing we know is that Arjun was definitely, we have enough information in Mahabharata to tell us that Arjun was definitely older than 33 years, so 33 years old plus, when the Khandava happened. Now, if you take this, it comes to 5633, so that's 33 years plus 10. So Arjuna, based on this, it comes to be around 40, 42, 43 years old when Khandava Dahan occurred. So it makes sense. Okay, so we get some corollary or what you call triangulation or validation. We can do that. So this is additional bonus. So quickly, let's add that to our circle here. So 5590 BC, now we know additional information as the year of Khandava Vana Dahan. I'm done. Quick summary. Krishna was born at the midnight of, forgive me, that error there, 17-18 June, not 27-28 June, 5633 BC. Krishna lived for 107 plus years. Krishna killed Kamsa when he was around 11 years old. Krishna and Arjuna cleared the Khandava Vana to establish Indraprastha in 5590 BC. Mahabharata war occurred in 5561 BC. Kali Yuga began on the last day of the war, 2nd November 5561 BC, and flooding and destruction of Dwarka and Krishna's parinirvana occurred in 5525 BC. If you want to know, read more about it, more of my work, these are the 3 books. If you are in India, the Grand Ganesha offer is extended to a Grand Diwali offer. So you can take my 3 books, but some other wonderful books by Dr. Shiva Shastri, Mitra Desai, Mangesh Anaukar. Okay, so whole package, please enjoy it. If you're outside India, then Amazon is your choice. And that's how you can procure those books if you are interested. So with that, I'll stop.
Nilesh, I have a short question and a short work of this. I want to ask that there is any reference when did the Dwarka, means Krishna went to the Dwarka?
Is there a reference when Krishna went to the Dwarka? Good question. There are many references when Krishna went to Dwarka. And glad you asked, because going through the evidence from different places like Harivamsha, Vishnu Puran, Bhagavad Puran, it is not very smooth research to decide exactly he went. So it's not very easy to decide when he exactly went to Dwarka. But yes, there are descriptions, and many of them are actually a bit conflicting, contradictory descriptions. So it's very difficult to separate the grains from the chaff.
Nilesh, there is a similar question from Kamlesh Patel. Hello, can you please throw some light on giving Krishna to Nand, one place in Harivansh? Vasudev handed over in Mathura and did not travel to Gokul.
Okay, so Kamleshji, that question, and when I mentioned it, I had also said if you are taking notes, especially some people who see, I mean, those who read both Harivamsha and Bhagavad Puran, and they will see that the descriptions of Vasudev taking Krishna to wherever, Vraja, Gokul, Vrindavan. Now, you know, there are differences between these three places, but they are very close by. How do we reconcile? Well, sometimes we don't reconcile. You know, there is nothing to reconcile in some places. We comprehend. And what I mean by that is we have to go with the most plausible narrative. And also we have to ask the question, what problem I'm trying to solve? Because, you know, just for the sake of knowing something doesn't make sense, right? So what problem I'm trying to solve? So now what Kamleshji asked is a great question. Harivamsha description does not talk about Vasudev crossing the Yamuna river. It does not talk about the heavy rain. It does not talk about the heavy flood. In fact, it talks exactly opposite. So as if Vasudev went from Mathura to the place of Nanda, Yashoda, walking on the bank of a Yamuna. That is the Harivamsha description. Whereas in Bhagavad Puran, he totally crossed Yamuna. And those are exactly contradictory or conflicting with each other, right? So those are the descriptions. If you ask for my, what you can say, educated opinion, if you want to call it, I will go with the Harivamsha description because it matches with the bigger description, bigger evidence coming from Mahabharata and everything else.
There was a question from Lata Paulji. She writes, isn't 72 too old to fight a war?
Okay, great question. Isn't 72 very old to fight a war? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, if we look at ourselves, then yes. Now, if you look at the Mahabharata personalities, don't forget that Bhishma gave a tough time to Pandava army for the first 10 days. And if we do a logical estimate based on whatever little evidence is available in Mahabharata, then we have to admit that Bhishma cannot be younger than 140 years at the time of the Mahabharata war. Okay, so there were Drona was 85 years old, and of course Bhima and Yudhishthir are even older. But let me add something else. This is a good subject for original research, which means somebody must be willing to commit rest of their life, doesn't matter how old you are, to just do this if you are serious about it. Otherwise, no point asking that question. In Mahabharata, we have a description where average age of a individual, like a human being, is stated as 120 years. In fact, 120, whatever the Sanskrit word, you will see that many times, you know, and that was considered average age, like average longevity. But I will add one more thing. The context in which this 120 years is given as an average age is actually, I will not describe the context. I will encourage you to read Mahabharata, and so that is your motivation to go there. 120 is described as if it is on the lower side, which is to say there were people who easily went above 120. So once, if that descriptions we accept, then 72 looks like a young individual, or at least a capable individual. Now think of it in our times with the modern times, and the last, if you want to consider last 1,000 years or last few hundred years, some of the developments in medicine and whatnot, or even the lifestyle, don't we say now the 40 is a new 20, 50 is a new 20, and something like that, you know, as we get older, we keep on saying whatever old, however, howsoever old I am is like a new 20, you know. So I mean, jokingly saying that, but something like this, I mean, we have to do more research to understand why people in those times, 7,500 plus years, could fight even at the age of 70, 80s, and even 140? We don't know the answer, but if we are truly curious, then we need to do original research, and we cannot just ask someone else to do it. We have to do it ourselves. Thank you.
You know, when we were children, we were told these stories. So according to my grandmother, Sri Krishna died because there was some grass grown over there and everybody fought and rubbed that grass and they all died. And the Pandavas walked to heaven. And I think Yudhishthira was the last to survive right till the top. So is this, how did Sri Krishna die? Was it because of flooding or because of this grass or whatever we were told? Could you clarify that, please?
Yes, thank you. So the Pandavas, what you said is correct. They went into Himalayas, okay, Mahaprasthana Parva, and one after another, everyone started falling and so on and so forth. That's a very small Parva. You can actually read it in the Mahabharata if required with the translation. Beautiful Parva. Krishna, not very clear information is given in the Mahabharata, other than the fact that Krishna passed away around the same time as the flooding and destruction of Dwarka. Now, in additional Puranas, you get some additional description, and the typical when I say typical, I mean something that's popular and almost known to everyone, is that Krishna was dejected after the Yadus started fighting among each other. He just left the place. Okay, and then it's sort of like in a frustrated point, it's a leela, but for a bhakta it is a leela. So I'm just saying, whichever way you want to take it, literally, figuratively, emotionally, devotionally, you decide. But he was sitting under a tree, and a hunter came, and Krishna's movement, he thought it is a movement of a deer or some animal, and he threw the arrow. It hits Krishna's feet, and that's how Krishna passes away. That is the katha I know.
Nilesh ji, mera question jo hai, the question which I have got, it's a journey from Mathura to Dwarka. Krishna, he was a kid who was brought up in the villages like Gokul and Vrindavan and all those places. And there must be some vision that he was like a leader who was taking people towards the city life.
Mm-hmm.
So how you see that Krishna was one of the pioneers for the townships and the life towards the cities, urban cities of that time.
Okay. I got that question. I think you are getting muted suddenly in between while you are saying, but I got your question. I think I got your question. So is Krishna one of the pioneers for urbanization in the Indian context? Krishna, I would say, was not the pioneer for a urban life. Although what you said is correct, that from a Mathura, which was also a city, but maybe a smaller city, he took them to Dwarka. The reason was totally different. I'll briefly mention it. But Krishna was a social reformer. I mean, why is a Purana Purush and Yuga Purush and Purna Avatar? Is because Krishna did many amazing things. For example, think of the emphasis on the vegetarianism. Krishna is responsible for it. For example, sometime in the modern like West trying to teach us our history, they will make a claim that the vegetarianism came only after it's like Jainism and Buddhism. In fact, you will find the principles of Jainism, or even because they are basically Hindu dharma. I mean, these are same dharma sampradaya. You will find the foundations of Jainism is actually very old. Even the Jain people will accept. I mean, Shruti, if she has learned, she can enlighten us. This going back, because you are looking for that Shramana dharma, and that you can see it way back into all the way. So therefore, Mahavira, they will connect to Ikshvaku Vamsha, just like Buddhism connects to Ikshvaku Vamsha and Rama Vamsha. Back to this question of cities. We have descriptions in Bhagavad Puran of establishment of a city where now Krishna established Dwarka, but that was also a city before, Kushasthali, that can go as far back, even based on archaeological evidence, to 30,000 years. Okay, so Kushasthali was a city, Mathura was a city, Hastinapur was a city, Jarasandha, in the whatever the Jarasandha's capital, was a big city. Now, reason Krishna moved from Mathura to Dwarka was a Jarasandha. Okay, and so what happens now? The Dwarka's prosperity is because of a commerce. Okay, now that's why the port city. So now from Mathura, how do you do the business? Okay, you are going through Yamuna and a Ganga and all the Bay of Bengal and then going around the world. Okay, now in Patna or somewhere there, Jarasandha is controlling the port, controlling the passageway. That was the, I mean, if you start looking into it, then everything falls in place. That is the reason there was a fight between the Yadus and Jarasandha. And finally, Yadus realized that it's not easy to win against Jarasandha. Finally, Krishna found a way with a Bhima, and I'll not go into that story. That's why they moved to Dwarka. And was that Dwarka like a totally new place? Not really. It belonged to Yadu dynasty. If you go back from a Manus all the way to Anartha to Revata, okay, the Revata established Kushasthali long time before Krishna. So Krishna in some sense rejuvenated. The description says Krishna found that island, and then established that city. So Krishna definitely established a big city. That is correct. But I wouldn't say he was the first one. Not at all. I mean, Ayodhya, talk about Ayodhya going back 14,000 years was a big city. And we have a long descriptions of Ayodhya as a city. So we don't have to get stuck into what Western Indologists like us to believe, that only with the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa the cities began. They know nothing. Thank you.
Nileshji, a few days back, rather 6 months back, I was talking to some gentleman for some article to be written. And I wanted that he should write an article over Krishna, the Krishna's as a social reformer and what Krishna did for the society. It happened to be that the person there was a Gujar. And Gurjars, I don't know, he immediately said that there are the things which Krishna had not done good too. So I just want to know what is that very thing which made him to say that as a Gurjar versus a Yadav or whatever.
Okay, well, no, great question, Pawanji, but that is a question you need to ask him for explanation, not me, because I have no idea what led him to that answer. Thank you.
This Dhumraketu, the head to tail, the comet, you said the length was about 13 nakshatras, about 170 degrees of the horizon. Now, depending upon the altitude, it would have taken some time. If it was nearer to the earth, then it would have just flashed by with a long tail from head to tail. If the altitude was higher, then it would take a much longer time for it to traverse from starting from one nakshatra to the other, depending upon altitude. I don't think is there any mention of the time it took from?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's dissect this question for a bit. So Ramaji, I mean, you are mentioning the altitude, like how far it is from the earth. Then you are mentioning the time for it to move. I would say that those both things, they are relevant for whatever things. They are not relevant at all in this particular observation. So let's go look at the comet. What happens? Actually, comet, I mean, so when I said the tail of the comet, I mean, the whole comet was expanded for the 13 nakshatra. It is only visual thing for us. That is not to say that actually it was like literally there that long. Okay, actually comet is what? Comet is a much smaller object. Sometime it can be a kilometer, even less than that, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, not more than that. Okay, and still it is very far away from the earth. So even that altitude doesn't come in the picture. How fast they travel also doesn't come in the picture. So what happens is, actually, when the comet is not in the closer to the sun, or when we see it from the earth, we will not see it. It is like very impossible to see literally, like without the telescopes and even then. So why do we see it? When it comes closer into the solar system and makes a circle around the sun and goes away, what is a comet? It has got this mass, it has got ice, and that ice is going away, and that is getting reflected with the sunlight, and that's why it becomes visible. So what we are seeing is just a visibility. It's not like a spread that long 17 nakshatra, number one. Second one, because we can only see it when it comes near the sun, the best time to see it is just before the sunrise and just after sunset. because that's only when it's visible, because it needs a sun reflected light or something for us to see it. It is relatively small object, and it is that snow or whatever, it starts melting, you can say. It has got ice in it, because it goes far away and becomes cold, and because of the sun's heat, it's melting. It starts throwing those particulates, and those particulates with the whatever is there, in the sun reflection, that's what it gives that shape. Now, how big or how small a comet would be seen from the Earth has nothing to do with how much material it has. I mean, it might have something to do with it, but it has to do with what angle it came to the sun with respect to the Earth. What is the angle? So there are these many factors. So it is just a visual picture. It's like saying you go to a movie, and on the 70 whatever the big movie screen, the movie actor or the actress, they appear to us like 10 feet tall, but they're not 10 feet tall. Think of something like this. It is just a visual effect that we are saying. And so the visual effect that time described is like as if that comet was covering the 13 nakshatranam trayodasha, which is the whole visible sky. So it must have been an extremely spectacular view, because I know of, I studied with this observation, I studied a lot of cometary observations. And I talked to the individual people who have seen these comets. Like these people, some of these people are old now. And when they said certain comet was great, then I went and simulated that comet in astronomy. And actually, you find that comet was not that big. But even they felt, my God, it looked so big, as if it's going to hit the Earth, when it was not that big. Now, in comparison to that, just the simulation that I showed you, it is so spectacular. And just all we have to do is just to imagine what Andhaka would have seen and what he might be describing. Thank you.
Nileshji, I have another question from Mahabharata, where Krishna demises. In starting, Yudhishthir says that before the demise of Krishna, there are meteorites falling in the northern and the eastern regions, and the rivers are now drying up again and again. When I tried about to search, there is any meteorite falls in 5561 BC, I didn't find any papers in that region. So, do you have found any corroborating evidence for this?
Okay, great question. So if I can repeat the question, so and just correct me there. So stay in the unmute fashion for a minute. So Yudhishthir is talking about meteorite shower when Krishna's time of passing away, and rivers are drying up, you said?
Yes. Rivers are, they were drying, and they were, means what we can do, shorten their lengths. Actually,
okay, fine. Okay, got it. Now, so we have two pieces of claims here. One is a meteorite shower, and another one is rivers drying up. Now, rivers drying up, we have that evidence. For the entire Mahabharata time, we have that evidence. I mean, Mahabharata claim is there for Saraswati and other, and we have a actual evidence. River Saraswati, but in general evidence before Mahabharata, after Mahabharata, you have to read my papers, you have to read my talks, and there are so many papers. I'm telling you the number, 50 plus. Unless you find 50, don't stop. Those many papers talking about this flux, river in a flux. So that is there. Now, I'll come to the second, then come back to first. Now, meteorite shower. Do you know something? There is a Taurian meteorite shower every year. Okay, as the Earth goes through the place, goes through around the sun, there are certain reasons. I'm not going to technicalities. There are meteorite shower all the time. Now, do they happen in our times? Yes, they happen in our times. We don't see them because of the light pollution, cities, we are closed, we are too busy on our smartphone instead of looking at the sky, even if we can look at the sky. Okay, yes. But they are there. So the meteorite showers are there now. Okay, rivers are drying in our times too. If you realize what the problem is in India, they were drying at that time. There was a meteorite shower. The reason I spent time on answering your question in a detailed way is this is for you, but this is for everyone who might be listening also. When we look at some evidence and we want to decide, can I use this evidence to determine something that I want to know? You have to pick a evidence which is also crisp and sharp in its nature. Like rivers drying up is something true now. Somebody could have said that is true 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. It's a very relative thing to say rivers are drying up or rivers are flooding up. Meteorite shower is happening every year, as I said. Victorian shower, not just one, there are multiple. So we have to have a more specific description in order to claim something. Okay, so these both evidence, we should not discount them, but in the current state, they are next to useless for any purposes. And because I am saying next to useless doesn't mean you should take it, but you can take it and say, oh, how can I make it testable? Because you have to show there is a meteor shower there, but other times there is not. Then that evidence has a value, just like that comet I showed. That comet is there in 5622 BCE, but no other Mahabharata researcher will able to show such a comet covering 13 nakshatras beginning with a Bharani when Krishna was 11 years old according to their calculation. Nobody will able to show it. You understand?
Yes.
This is that triangulation. And so great question. But those two evidences, as I see it today with my limited understanding, are not very useful. In fact, not useful at all as I see them.
Nilesh, you mentioned 50 papers, at least 50 papers which talk about rivers drying up. Are they all about river Saraswati, or there are other rivers?
No, about the rivers in India, rivers around the world, I mean, I just said 50 because Vishnuvardhan, I didn't want to make him work too hard. There are actually 200 plus. Now, usually I remain careful to say this. Do you know why? Because I say there are 200 papers. Next thing I say, I have them. Then what happens? I get an email. Please send those papers to me. I will be just busy doing that. No, I mean, it's very easy. Go to Google, start doing it, drying of rivers and something. And Vishnu is good at that, right? Vishnuvardhan, you actually go and find those papers yourself too.
Yes.
Sometimes he communicates with me. Yeah.
I tried, but I didn't find any.
Okay, you have to search harder, man.
Okay.
It is very,
I can tell you there are 200 papers. Thank you.